is your why is your elbow talking?
I'm sitting there with my elbow on the button.
Yeah. No, but it's one of those things where I wish I could talk about. And if you are an avid listener and viewer of this show, you hopefully will know what I'm throwing down. Hope you're picking up what I'm throwing down. But then on top of that, and Chris and I had a side conversation, a brief one about feedback and commentary. And actually, Rakai was very kind enough to reach out to me a little bit as well on this. Is the whole feedback situation where people give feedback on the show, or then specifically they target you.
Mm-hmm.
And
can I suggest what might be particularly difficult for you about it, because it got to me today, and I can go a solid year before it cracks me, but today what really fucking pisses me off about what happens to your words online is you can say one thing,
right,
and they will twist it into whatever it is that they need to be a pissy little bitch and have a righteous opinion about something and throw something back at you. So I was talking to a group just before the show started saying, we have a major problem here. The community is fleeing the IRC room, and they're going to Discord because the people that are in IRC 24/7 sit there like bottom feeders and rot it out with bitching and complaining, and you've been literally complaining about this one topic, one particular thing, for an entire month now, and we've seen 20 people leave. Like, it's getting bad. Like, your complaining is going to kill this community resource, and they take that and they turn it around as a tax on me. Well, Chris doesn't feel like he has enough. Here, I'll just read it for you because it's the craziest shit. Listen to this. Here's there's all these kinds of crazy things people say in here. So one person says that Chris says IRC is dying. Another person says that that I don't understand the technology. Another person says that it's about open source and that they don't care what I use, but they have moral issues like with this problem. Like, it goes off in all these different directions. And my one thing I was trying to relay to them was, I understand if you disagree, but constantly bitching about it for a month straight is driving people away from the very thing that you're bitching about saving. And I'm trying to tell you that you have to turn this into a productive conversation, or you're going to kill the very resource that you're bitching about saving all the time. So I restated my opinion 3 different times in this conversation, and it still gets twisted because they hear what they want to hear. I can literally write it out over and over, and they hear what they want to hear. So I understand why. So here's XMN in the chat room writes, after I explained to them what's going on, he says, well, I don't really know what's going on here. I haven't been really following, but if I had to guess, I'd say this is probably blowback from Chris not making enough money or getting enough recognition from the world at large. I might get hate for saying this, but I hope Chris can find a balance. I mean, damn, we're all trying to find our own ways.
Oh, God.
That's
double facepalm.
I was like, I'm sitting here trying to tell this room that they're in their belly aching for a month straight about something, and if they don't stop belly aching about it, they're going to drive away all the people, because we've had people leaving in a mass exodus, and there's new shiny community resources for them to go to, so they're killing the very thing that they're in there bitching about. That's all I'm trying to tell them. I'm trying to be like, guys, if we don't want this IRC room to die, we have to change the tone of conversation in here. That was what I went in with. And it gets perverted and twisted into any single particular little thing that they want to hear and get triggered about. And then they reflect it back at you. And they do it with the velocity of any anger that they have from the shit their boss gave them that day, or the compromise they had to make with their wife, or the bad commute they had. Like, it comes at you with the velocity of the shitty day that they've had. And they're desperate to have something to be angry about that they have leverage over. So this thing in a box that they hear from all the time, who's not actually a human being, they can't conceptualize you as a human because they've never met you. So you're not fully human to them. So you're the perfect target for their shit. And so they just throw it at you. And I got to be honest, for the most part, When I confront people about it, they usually say, yeah, I'm sorry, man, I've had a really bad day. My wife just left me, or my girlfriend cheated on me, or my boss is a dick. I'm really sorry. I was just upset. I had a bad day. And that's generally, you've probably seen this, right?
Yeah.
This is generally what the response is when you push back a little bit. But it has gotten to a point now where everybody's at an 11. Everybody wants to fight. Everybody has a righteous indignation that they're being oppressed over and that somebody must be told about it. Everybody is a extremist now on something. Nobody just is chilling the fuck out and just staying calm. And at a certain point, like, I don't know if it's worth engaging anymore in the conversation. Like, there is a diminishing return on results from shit like that, from comments, or those dickbags in the subreddit. They're getting paid to take it over and spread shit constantly. Like, who the fuck has time for that? I would rather spend 30 more seconds FaceTiming my kids than spend 10 minutes dealing with the shitheads in the chat room or the subreddit. Like, nobody. This kills the conversation. It makes everybody radicalized. Everybody draws the lines. Everybody hears what they want to hear. And because you and I are public and we're talking about things that push people's buttons, we get the brunt of it. And it's a disgusting state of our civilization right now. And everybody needs something apparently more concerning, because let me ask you this, Chase. If one of those motherfuckers had stomach cancer, or if one of those motherfuckers was dying in 2 days, do you think it would be important enough for them to sit down and chew your ass out about something? Yeah. The only reason it matters to them to drag you down and give you shit is because they've got nothing fucking better going on in their life. They don't have anything shittier going on. Their wife isn't leaving them. They don't desperately miss their kids. They don't have ass cancer. Whatever the fuck their problem is that they don't have, they've got enough free time that they come after one of us. And I'm so goddamn sick of it because it's so fucking pathetic. And I don't do it. I don't go out to comments. I don't watch somebody on YouTube and then take a huge shit on them. I don't attack one of the hosts on the show. I've never done that. And I consume all of my media online. But there's people out there that are so fucking amped up and they're so ready to be triggered that they like they're on a full sensor sweep. They're like Mr. Data at the ops console doing a full fucking sensor sweep, and they're looking for something to upset them. And apparently it's you and I.
It's interesting to me, especially and I'm going to repeat probably some of this in the show. But thanks to our current president.
Yeah, I really think it's part of
no,
and
I really do, and it's not just politics though.
It's getting so awful.
He is fueling the anger, and instead of trying to unite us.
Well, he's setting a standard.
Well, he's setting a very negative standard, a very standard of what? Let's be against each other.
Yeah.
Let's add fuel to the flame.
This is what the presidency does. They have very little. Oh, you're gonna have to. Yeah. Which one of these needs to be muted? Is it this one? Probably this one. You're gonna.
I can just turn it. I can mute it here.
Well, no, I think it's this computer.
Oh,
maybe.
But
you're gonna have. This is what they do. Like,
but it's not. It's not just that. It's the thought that I'm supposed to Let me back it up a little bit. We've been doing the show 4 or 5 years now. God, can you believe it's been that long? Sorry. We've been doing this so long, I would hope that my record stands for itself. And that being that I take all the information in. I analyze information that I get from mainstream media, from alternate media, from friends, from family, and then ultimately I try to come to a decision of thought and opinion based upon the facts that I've gathered and try to decipher out the lies and the spin, the hyperbole and everything. And if everybody knows me, there are times that I agreed with President Obama. There are times that I disagreed with President Obama. There are times that I've agreed with President Trump, namely, for example, the H-1 visa program, for example, where companies will use the program to basically get cheaper labor and then making their current employees train their replacements in order to get severance packages and shit like that. So there are things that I agree with the president on. There are things that I disagree on. And sometimes that means that I'm going to agree with something that CNN or MSNBC or one of these mainstream media outlets say.
Oh, I can see how this is going to come up in the show, actually, because my first thought was it's funny. All of this, I link all of this with the stuff that's going on in Charlottesville. Like, it's all connected.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I can't wait. So
well, that was good for me. I needed
Yeah.
to get that out before the show because I don't want that in the show.
hey, you
I can be much more
when
rational
you want to
in
see
the
Dr.
show.
Chase, you just let me know.
Yeah, that was
you
good.
Just let me know.
That was good. I probably should have done it offline, but it was good to get it out
Yeah,
because
you're
I'll tell you
welcome.
what, it really upsets me, and the reason why it wouldn't bother me like to such a large degree, except I'm like 11 years into doing shit online now with an audience,
Yeah.
and it is just the trend line is getting worse. It's like a hockey puck too. It's like or a hockey puck stick. It feels like it's getting worse faster. Just how man. It's really bad. It's so much worse than it was even 5-6 years ago. And even 3 years ago. And it feels like maybe even a year ago. And it's heavy shit to see it because it's like, where does this end? Like, that's what really gets me.
And
that's what really gets me. It's like this, because it feels like
when does it
narcissistic celebrity culture and internet and reality are all merging into one crazy culture.
It's like, when does it stop being politics and just talk about what's right and what's wrong? And
yeah, when is it? What Noam Chomsky always has this famous quote where he says that the way things really remain the same is you just force everybody into this narrow spectrum of conversation and make that an extremely heated, lively debate that makes everybody really fired up, and you ignore the much broader, larger issues where things probably matter a lot more. And you keep people talking about race, and you keep people talking about sexuality, and you keep people talking about religion, and you keep people talking about oppression over and over again, and you grind it, and you grind it, and you grind it, and it becomes people's identity. It becomes the struggle that is associated with their identity, and it becomes the fight of their generation, and it becomes all-consuming, and then the media narrative feeds that. And in the meantime, we don't talk about the complete and total transference of military power from the presidency to the military after Obama made specific changes to make sure that troops couldn't be increased in Afghanistan. I'll save for the show. My point is there are major dynamic shifting in the power structure of the federal government and what our military-industrial complex is allowed to do, and we're all talking about racism still.
Right.
Like it's the days of Martin Luther King all over again.
Yeah. And no, there's so much to talk about. Let's save it for the show because
let's.
I don't want to be here until like 8 o'clock at night.
Jeez, let's do it. It is L Unfilters, and it is episode 248. So chat room, you can suggest away if you like. Mr. Chase, I had a title. I think we'll save it. We'll see. I might have one already in the bank, but we'll see. You can suggest yours. Here we go. 8-3, 8-2, right now. This is Unfilter, episode 248 for August 23rd, 2017.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Todd here in Washington. Welcome to MTP Daily. Folks, what I just saw gave me the wrong kind of chills. Honestly, I'm a bit shaken from what I just heard and suspect it's not just me. Moments ago at Trump Tower, the President of the United States painted white nationalists and members of the alt-right as victims of what he described as club-wielding members of the alt-left. It was a chilling mix of whataboutism, false equivalence, and a total muddying of the waters after one person was killed and at least 19 were injured when members of the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists protested the removal of a Confederate statue in Charlottesville. Where to begin? You might as well start with the president painting these white nationalist protesters as the real victims of a violent left-wing movement.
That's right. The world did not end after the total eclipse. We are still here, even though
Are we?
The world is kind of surreal
Maybe
in its
we're
own
ghosts,
right.
dude. Maybe we're ghosts.
Welcome again to an episode of Unfiltered, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly show about the news you shouldn't be watching. That voice that you heard from the great beyond, from the other side, the dark side of the moon, is Mr. Chris Fisher.
Hey, buddy.
And I'm Chase.
Hey, buddy.
So
I made it. I survived. I made it through the solar eclipse.
Yes. Where did you end up going?
We went down just north of Lincoln City.
So a lot of people headed down there.
Mhm,
How was the trip home?
It was good. It was good. It was all right. You know, it all made for a great vlog. Not to plug right here at the very top, but I just published it this morning.
The blog that
The
you might
vlog.
find over at youtube.com/Chris Fisher.
That would
You
be the
mean that
one, buddy. That would be. I should get you to do a stinger for me. You know? So Chase, that's not what we're here to talk about.
No. Actually, there's not really much to talk about.
No, especially after we had a private patron only episode last week, so we focused in on like 5 stories.
By the way,
total.
that intro
You like
definitely gave me a Woody.
Wor-
It was really good.
Worth the patron entrance alone.
It
right?
was. Yes,
so what do
very
you
good.
say? We got we have a really brief cyber in Russia segment today.
Always got to start.
I definitely want to talk about the outing of Bannon. And then I think we covered Charlottesville, the actual incident in the patron only episode, but there's still developments post that episode, specifically around the way Trump's handled the whole thing. So I thought we'd talk about that.
Yep.
There's a huge update that I think is actually the biggest story of the week that we got to talk about, and then we're going to end it on a high note that is actually it's pretty awesome. Chase.
Oh, and by the way, we do have a sack this week too.
Oh, yeah? Well, and of course, then it all gets wrapped up with a bow that is the overtime towards the end of the show.
Oh, that's right.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
So you ready to jump into our first?
ASL, buddy.
Let's do cyber.
The FBI is warning about a popular antivirus software linked to the government of Russia. Kaspersky Lab products are widely used by businesses and some government offices across this country.
Russian alone.
I sure hope this is true. I really do, because otherwise this is super sad. Kaspersky makes a legitimate product.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, and also they just have a really top-notch research division. Some of the biggest explosive dive-ins to malware have been from Kaspersky, and they have legitimately contributed to the cybersecurity industry. I'm not saying that they're not a Putin puppet. It's definitely a possibility, but if they are not, and this is just essentially defamation, this would be really unfortunate, because this so far has, from the outsides, appeared to have been one of the more legitimate quote-unquote cybersecurity companies.
Federal officials are concerned the software may be feeding user information to Russian intelligence. Jeff Pegues is in Washington, where the White House head of cybersecurity says the government needs more help to fight these hackers. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning. The White House cyber czar said the threat to U.S. systems and infrastructure extends beyond Chinese and Russian hackers, and that, quote, small little countries you wouldn't expect are also hitting us. Rob Joyce, the man in charge of protecting the U.S. from cyber threats, offered a sobering assessment of the country's deficit in cyber defense to a group of students.
So this is our cybersecurity czar,
Oh, okay.
and I'm a big fan of proper IT security. I'm definitely a big proponent of it. But I can't help be skeptical when I start hearing the numbers this guy's tossing around.
Right now, we're about 300,000 people short. We've got roughly 750,000.
Wait. Stop. Full stop. 300,000 people?
Yeah. I had an anxiety attack when he first said that number.
What?
He's talking private sector. He is talking private sector. I know, yeah.
People doing cybersecurity, and if the industry could hire everybody they wanted, they would hire another 250,000.
But they wouldn't have the money to do it.
So this is a common thing that seems to happen the most in the IT field. I don't understand why these. So there's the same metric that all of these coding boot camps were based around, that we covered a couple of weeks ago on Coder Radio rather extensively. So these coding boot camps have been propping up since basically mobile development was a thing. I'm going to try to stop saying the basically word. But since mobile development was a thing, these boot camps have been a great way for people that are retraining into a new industry or want to just refresh on a particular language, can go and just the theory is they're getting like a concentration on a particular thing. And they just started sprouting up like bonanza, like crazy. Like they made like DeVry and Phoenix University look like newbies. And they started popping up like McDonald's, really, just everywhere. And guess what? One by one this year, they're shutting down because they were based on this phony number that the government cooked up. It was this phony number that's driven STEM education. It's the same phony number where they say, we need X million programmers. This is the same justification they use for the visa program.
Mm-hmm.
There are X hundreds of thousands of skilled workers missing from the labor force.
We just can't find them. We just can't get them.
We can't hire them fast enough. And, you know, you look around, you're like, God, I know more unemployed people in my life than I ever have ever.
I was one of them for a very long period of time.
And you are a well-skilled IT person, and
Yep.
it's really insulting to hear companies like Facebook and Microsoft or the cybersecurity czars say they just can't hire enough people. That's such bullshit.
Oh, it's bull
because
crap.
the number that he comes up with,
Protecting the U.S. from cyber threats offered a sobering assessment of the country's deficit in cyber defense to a group of students.
so just to underscore, this is a sobering deficit. This number, it's a sobering deficit to underscore how underprepared we are.
Right now, we're about 300,000 people short.
These numbers are based on the next 5 to 10 years. So over the next 5 to 10 years, industry needs to hire 300,000 people. They don't need 300,000 today.
No.
It's over the next 5 to 10 years. But they act like it's a need that is relevant today. And then when you boil it down, their justification is, well, we've got to get the ball rolling. We've got to do something.
Right.
But then they talk in these, but that's never disclaimed in this piece. It's never disclaimed this is over the next 5 to 10 years. You're led to believe that this is an urgent deficit that is leaving the United States vulnerable. So our top guy, our cyber czar is on top of it.
Right now, we're about 300,000 people short. We've got roughly 750,000 people doing cybersecurity.
You're telling me that your CBS News couldn't look into this and tell you this? I know everybody loves to go on about how RT's propaganda and Fox News is crap, but this is the CBS Morning News, and they can't Google this? How does some podcast in Arlington, Washington manage to figure this out?
And if the industry could hire everybody they wanted, they would hire another 250,000 to almost 1/3 more people.
Joyce also expressed concern about the popular antivirus software from Kaspersky Lab. U.S. officials believe the company has ties to Russian intelligence. FBI officials have met with private industry.
So there's no evidence then? And so this guy, is it a political position?
Representatives to relay concerns about using the software. Already the federal government has vowed not to use its products, but local and state governments make extensive use of that software. Kaspersky Lab denies the accusations, calling them, quote, false allegations. Nora.
I don't know. But this has been bubbling for weeks. And I think also if you do contract work with the federal government, you can't use Kaspersky either, but you are mandated to have antivirus protection, which means if you bought all in on Kaspersky, say it's all licensed up, but you say maybe make all of the money or the majority of the money from the federal government contract that you have, you're buying new antivirus, buddy, because otherwise that contract is null and void. Because you got to have antivirus, but you can't use Kaspersky to be a federal contractor.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Get yourself Microsoft Security Center. You'll be good with that.
I've been just a couple of creepy things here and there with Google on recent censorship, like when I'm Google searching for stories for this show, or how certain comments that say the word Seth Rich.
So you're all in. You think it's Google censorship? It's not an algorithm thing.
Well, I think it's both.
Okay.
I don't think it's a human being doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I think the humans designed the algorithm and then supply it with filters and keywords. I would go as far as this. I would bet you that there is a keyword list somewhere in the data centers of Google that have the words Seth Rich on them, and that list
and to deprioritize the search results.
Yeah, that list is used in various different algorithms to rank things.
And you'll see it like on page 3 instead of page 1.
And they could tweak a number here or there, and all of a sudden that weight matters a lot more. Yeah. That's as far as I would go conspiracy-wise with it.
All right, fair enough.
YouTube and its parent company Google are being accused of stifling alternative viewpoints. They're cracking down on extremist content, but have also removed legitimate files from journalists and opposition groups, it seems. Jacqueline Vogel's got more.
Internet regulation is becoming ever more automated, meaning the machines are now in charge of monitoring what you write and post. So when you have your video taken down, it's nothing personal, it's just the algorithm. YouTube now has computers largely responsible for blocking extremist content, and the company is head over heels with the cutting-edge technology that makes this all possible.
Over 75% of the videos we've removed for violent extremism over the past month were taken down before receiving a single human flag.
And that all sounds well and good, given that, in theory, machines should be objective. But it turns out they're not. Recently, we've seen a number of journalists, monitors, and Syrian opposition groups have their content blocked. despite the fact that very similar videos went untouched on mainstream news channels' YouTube pages. Those who were targeted say the site is purposefully trying to erase certain documentation of the war.
I think what's so troubling about this, if we look at the Syrian accounts, this is video chronicling a 6 or 7 year war and some of the most important parts of that war from the perspective of Syrians.
So this is something I think is fascinating. So video that's being uploaded in theory by citizens to YouTube that's sort of documenting the war, sort of horrible vlog style, is getting pulled down. And some of these videos are like proof of war crimes on the part of the U.S.
And what are the reasons that they're being pulled? Because usually it'll
they
say.
have a whole bunch of reasons. I've never seen like the thing they give you, but I know that from some of the reasons Unfiltered's gotten flagged before, or Philip DeFranco, he's talked about his videos he does news show, and a lot of his videos get flagged. And it can be anything of a political nature. Actually, it's kind of risky on YouTube. It's essentially that's when you go anything in political, because their descriptors, which are about 4 of that you can get flagged by, are all fairly vague. And at the end of the day, kind of come down to plus our own discretion.
Right.
And it's a difficult one because then CNN will post that video inside their video, and that's copacetic. And I definitely have witnessed this myself. And I've kind of talked to you about it a little bit, and but nobody really reports on it except for RT. Maybe it doesn't matter. But I think it shows the warning signs of automating speech, censorship of speech.
Well, and then it's also prioritized based upon either how big your audience is, or or how much money you have in the pocket that you can dedicate a person to completely counteract all these automated flags.
Essentially, are you big enough for YouTube to notice and make an exception?
Right. You know, and all the major industries get
insert actually Twitter, Facebook, any platform that people use to try to democratize communication. This conversation matters. And they, at the end of the day, have full discretion. I mean, they're a private company. They can do whatever the hell they want. Or I guess they're a public company, but they're a company. They can do whatever the hell they want, and
That's
they do.
Right, yeah.
Because I think the only way to solve this problem would be for everyone in the world, or at least a large enough percentage that it's okay to say, the value of free speech is worth it enough to me that I am willing to be potentially hurt or upset by something I see or hear. And until everyone is willing, or enough people are willing to make that compromise, this is always going to be a problem. In order to have a platform that enables free speech, there has to be speech that you don't like. It doesn't mean you have to consume it, and there are tools like downvotes and don't show me this anymore and not interested. There are tools built into the platform to curate your own personal feed so you don't see that. That's what YouTube's designed to do. But shutting these things down simply because you don't want others to consume that speech, that feels like that's where we cross the line. And the fact that Google has automated that, and it appears to be fairly inhumane in such that it also even impacts our humble little podcast, it does feel like it's not the right compromise. It's not the right balance. And it's just the beginning, because these bots are only going to get so much better. The data's only going to get richer, the temptation is only going to get bigger, and the pressure is only going to get stronger to respond to this kind of stuff. Bots are going to be easier to build. Networks that make them think faster and collect data are going to get faster and quicker. It's just the beginning of this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Google and Facebook are leading the way. And so far, I'm not impressed with either one's efforts, but I could see this happening everywhere one day. Imagine, I don't know, have you read Ready Player One?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So this isn't
amazing.
a spoiler at all. So I'll just say this. So in Ready Player One, the premise, it revolves around an MMO. Essentially, it's way more than that, but it starts as an MMO. And there's an educational component to the MMO, and the MMO will just proactively censor certain words. It can proactively prevent you from saying the F word. It just won't ever transmit that F word.
Right. You say it, but it won't come across.
Right. You can say it all day long. F, 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 F. And that kind of thing, that like real, even I think it's going to start applying to even real-time communications. It's really going to be something to see where this goes.
Oh, man.
And I might be in the minority on my opinion that in order to fully support free speech, you have to be willing to be, or at least be prepared to be hurt by some of it. Interpret hurt how you like. Let's just do a quick Russia investigation update. There's an effort that's going to go nowhere over at Fox News. Pin it all on Obama. Quick.
I mean, President Trump tweeting out just today, in fact, about a stunning new Politico piece saying, and I quote, according to a report just out, President Obama knew about Russian interference 3 years ago, but he didn't want to anger Russia. Politico reports that the Obama administration got multiple warnings as far back as 2014 of Russia's intention to disrupt the U.S. political system, and that Russia's networks reached far, and they reached wide into U.S. and European governments.
But is this, okay, so two things. First of all, before the first thing, second thing, is this just sort of like saying it's going to rain in Seattle? Like you get a report, you're like, it's going to rain in Seattle. Like, oh, shit. You get a report that says Osama bin Laden determined to attack within the U.S. You're like, of course.
And the sky is blue.
Yeah. But the first part here. So what I love about this, and I think you brought this up before on the show, is this cake and eating it too argument.
Oh, spiking the football.
So Trump's got this argument of there's no collusion. Nobody in my campaign colluded.
Nothing wrong. Haven't done anything wrong.
And then he's also got Obama knew there was going to be collusion all along.
Knew. He knew. He totally knew.
What I love about him is he's got the chutzpah to argue both sides of this thing.
Come on, Trump's that's his MO for the past few years. He'll say one thing and then the very next day completely contradict himself.
Actually, I think it is a trick. If I were the Dilbert guy, if I was Scott Adams, I'd say it's a hypnotist trick. What he does here is he owns it and then he flips it and reverses it, like Missy Elliott. Like, so the fake news thing, that wasn't started by him. I don't know if you remember.
You're right. It was, and then he jumped on it.
He owned that thing, and he flipped it around, and now he smashes it in their face for like over a year now. He's been ramming it back in their face. He flips it, and he reverses it, and then he owns it. So now it's, well, of course Russia has been interfering. I mean, they're a powerful nation state with interests, and not only is it obvious that Russia would try to interfere and maybe hack our election, but Obama even knew about it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they colluded with anyone in the Trump campaign.
Right.
That's his position. But it's an interesting and complicated one that is hard to follow if you don't break it down. And we also got a little bit more information on the digging into Manafort's apartment.
That's right, the FBI raid.
Apartment makes it sound like it's not a palace. Yeah, we didn't know much at the time because it was just coming out when we reported on it a couple of weeks ago. Here's a bit more information.
With absolutely no warning, FBI agents showed up before dawn to search the suburban Washington, D.C. apartment of Paul Manafort, a Donald Trump confidant who played a central role in his presidential campaign for 6 months. The search 2 weeks ago at this building in Alexandria, Virginia, came as a surprise. Manafort's spokesman says he has, quote, consistently cooperated with law enforcement and other serious inquiries and did so on this occasion as well. But a former federal prosecutor says the surprise search is a sign that Robert Mueller's investigators don't trust him.
The execution of a search warrant means that there is a concern that the individual has documents that are harmful to him that he may not turn over cooperatively.
While Mueller's main task is investigating meddling by the Russians in the election and whether anyone in the U.S. helped them do it, law enforcement officials say Mueller has also been looking intensely at Manafort's foreign business dealings. The officials say FBI agents who searched his home were looking for tax and banking records from his work overseas, including in Ukraine and Cyprus. To get a warrant for that kind of search, FBI agents must persuade a federal judge that there's probable cause to believe a crime has been committed.
We were speculating about that.
And I said that last time on the show.
Yeah, that's it right there. So that's an interesting little development that they might have something of a crime. But what we don't know is if it's just his business dealings out of Ukraine. What does that really mean?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
What does that? I really want to know. What does that mean?
How far down the rabbit hole does it go?
Yeah. So there's a couple of interesting things just going on. I don't have any clips, but just talking about weird connections. Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her IT guy.
Oh, yeah.
That's proceeding. I think they've got him on 4 counts right now.
Now,
which none of them.
Wasn't there a threat of a subpoena to get her to
I don't know.
I thought there was, or something I was
Maybe.
reading about.
It's funny. So they got him on 4 counts. None of them are about money wiring over to Pakistan. They're all about other things like computer fraud and whatnot.
Right.
Debbie's doubling down on the fact that she was trying to keep him from persecution. But here's the crazy. Here's your crazy. I don't know if I have bacon. Let's see. Do we have any bacon over there, Chase? Do you have any bacon?
We do have some fresh Discord bacon.
Oh yeah, that's
very
true.
Fresh, peppery Discord bacon.
Good. That's good. That's good. Well, here's what the internet's abuzz about right now. There is possibly a link between this IT guy that she's been paying, not just him, but his family.
A crap ton of money.
Yeah. And he's had access to all kinds of data. There is some crazy internet link between him and the assassination of some president. I haven't really looked into it because it seems kind of way out there. But there is some crazy stuff with this whole thing going down. So anyways, I'm going to read it all, see if there's any clips that come out. We'll keep an eye on it, but there's nothing really major developing there with Debbie. But there is some big stuff developing with Bannon.
Oh, boy. By the way, I know we're going to talk all about Bannon, but I think during that press conference, which I know we'll probably talk about as well, the craziest press conference probably of all time with Trump in the hotel, talking about Mr. Bannon. Yeah. I was already thinking in my head, he's gone by the end of the week. Because whenever Don has talked about Mr. Bannon, it wasn't, Steve's a great guy, but Mr. Bannon, and I was like, and then Friday news dump, I felt it was so orchestrated.
So let's go a little back in time before all of this went down. Wait, hold on, I got it.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
Back in time.
Just a short while ago, we don't have to go that far back. Just after the Mooch got fired, he goes on ABC with George, and they have an interesting conversation about
that
Bannon.
He needs to curry favor.
You've been tough on Steve Bannon. Does he have to go?
Well, I think the president knows what he's going to do with Steve Bannon.
Which is what?
Well, let's leave it up to the president. It's his decision.
All right. First off, he just had the biggest tell of all time. If you play poker against the Mooch, you're going to win. Because
the Mooch is a. I mean, how does this guy have any respect? He tells.
I know. At the end of the day, I think the president has a very good idea of who the leakers are inside the White House. The president has a very good idea of the people that are undermining his agenda that are serving their own interests.
They include Steve Bannon?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, we're not on a...
his look on his face.
And then listen to this dumb thing he says.
We're not on a phone call and a taped phone call. And
he's talking about the phone call that got him fired.
And so we're on live television. And
what a dumbass.
So I would prefer to let the president make the decisions that the president needs to make.
You mentioned that taped phone call. That may have been what got you fired from the White House.
Look at him, Chase. Look at him, goes,
Got you fired from the White House. Let's show.
That's awkward.
It is kind of awkward, isn't it?
I'm not Steve Bannon. No. I'm not trying to build my own brand.
Okay, you got to set it up for the audio
George
audience.
Stephanopoulos, you are gold, buddy.
Do you think this was his call?
Oh yeah,
because this is the best thing ever.
Oh yeah,
this is
and
then
the split screen. That's got to be the producer.
Yeah.
Oh, this is.
I mean, so what's happening right now is George is playing audio of his phone call, but what they did as soon as the guy swears, they switch to a double box where they have the quote on the screen, and then they have the Mooch on the other side having to react to his own words, but you also get to see his reaction to the fact that he now has a live reaction cam to his words, and it's hilarious.
I'm not trying to build my own brand off strength of the president. And Ryan's is paranoid schizophrenic, paranoiac. And what he's going to do is, maybe Bill Shine's coming. Let me leak thing and see if I these people the way I Scaramucci for 6 months.
God, this is really embarrassing. They never do this. And you know what this shows you? This shows you that when they want to, they are capable of doing this.
Okay, the Mooch showed up a week ago. This is going to get cleaned up very shortly.
This, by the way, is Scaramucci himself. This is Scaramucci talking about himself in the third person, calling himself the Mooch.
6 months. Okay, the Mooch showed up a week ago. This is going to get cleaned up very shortly, okay? Because I nailed these guys. I got digital fingerprints on everything that they've done through the FBI and the Department of Justice.
Jeez, there's some real shit going down over there.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing?
The felony, they're going to get prosecuted probably for the felony. They'll probably get prosecuted for that. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, if you go back to that email when you responded to that phishing email that claimed to be from Rance Priebus, and he said, "We all know what you did."
Wow. Yeah, lie detector stars. Yeah.
Of course, that was your conversation. Ryan Lizza of The New Yorker.
Which, for the record, I thought was off the record. And
But you
for
didn't
the
ask for
record,
it to be off the record.
I understand that, but this is the reason why the media gets a bad shake from the American people. That was a very deceitful thing that he did.
You know, that is some crap.
All right, yeah, I'm sorry.
You don't call the opposition party, which is a media that writes critically about you and your candidate, and then tell them all of this. And
I don't even think it matters if it's opposition or favorable.
It's not
or
like he called Fox and was ranting to a Fox News anchor. He was writing to, he was ranting to a writer who's critical of them.
I mean, first off, he's not probably in a two-party state, so they didn't need his permission. And then secondly, if he wanted to make sure that he was off the record, he should have either
Wasn't he the freaking communications director?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Like, isn't that like communications 101?
He's trying to punch back for the words that he said, and he intentionally said. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah. So I just don't. I can't really wrap my brain around why Scaramucci did that, and it was what got him fired, without a doubt. So that's why it was really odd that Bannon went and did the same exact thing a couple of weeks later.
Want to get to politics now here at home, and certainly as there are updates from overseas, we'll take you back to Spain and bring those to you. However, we are getting new insight into President Trump's chief strategist. Steve Bannon has apparently a lot to say about a lot of things, his critics and his colleagues and his commander-in-chief. Correspondent Kevin Cork tonight with how the Bannon saga is playing out. Kevin, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Bill. And quite a saga it is. Now, he thought the conversation was off the record.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I called this left-leaning reporter.
He called a member of the media, any media, and had a conversation, which could be dubbed as an interview. And he's shocked that it was not off the record because
after this just happened to Scaramucci.
I mean, come on.
After it just so Bannon's so stupid. The big
Bannon,
clever Bannon,
the founder of Breitbart.
He's
founder of his own media empire. This bull.
It just doesn't. It doesn't even pass like a tiny bit of the sniff test.
Right.
Like it's not even worth considering as legitimate.
And this is where. I'm sorry, but Fox News gets a little bit of a bad rap here for being maybe a little too...
Because they're just like, they say. Yeah.
It's like, come on, man.
I know. Well, it's so...
Yeah, I know.
And the fact that anybody buys it is...
Kevin, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Bill. And quite a saga it is. Now, he thought the conversation was off the record. But even if it was off the record, what White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon told the American Prospect not only put him at odds with many inside the Trump administration, it put him at odds with the president himself.
Oh.
The interview comes as Mr. Bannon, for the second time in 4 months, finds himself fending off rumors of his pending ouster from the Trump team. Bannon said of his rivals, they're wetting themselves because he has the leverage to force them out. On China, he said the U.S. was at economic war with Beijing. He described adherents to ethno-nationalism as losers, a fringe element.
That's interesting right there, because the media often tries to paint him as sort of the leader of some of that. And so it's interesting that he calls them losers and a fringe element.
Nationalism as losers, a fringe element, a collection of clowns, adding, we gotta help crush it more.
That's pretty strong language.
But perhaps most surprising was Bannon's assessment of the situation in North Korea, about which he said there's no military solution here. They got us.
This is supposedly getting him the most shit inside the Republican circles. There's no military solution. They've got us.
Yeah, well, you got to keep the military-industrial complex going.
But other people have said that without controversy.
Right.
A lot of people agree. Unless you want tens of millions of people dead and sold, there's really no way to do this militarily.
I know, or non-militarily, or not.
It has to be non-militarily,
right? If you don't want, I see.
If you want tens of millions of people dead and sold because we couldn't come to a political solution, then you send in the military. Because the first thing that North Korea is going to do is they're not going to launch their stupid fucking fake missiles.
It's the dumb artillery.
Yeah, they're gonna launch the cheap shit at South Korea, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it, and that's what he's saying here. There's nothing controversial about this. Like what? Actually, none of these quotes are, and I've read it. Obviously, it's not that interesting.
That's in stark contrast to the president's own fire and fury comments.
The most interesting thing in this is he says that the Trump presidency is over. that the reason that got him elected, the populist stuff that got him elected, is over, and that the state basically has gotten to him. He's kind of what he says.
New Jersey Senator Democrat.
I didn't mean to play that. Sorry. But so that's interesting. But of course Fox doesn't really cover that.
Of course not.
No. That I thought, and he's going back to Breitbart, right? He's out. He's going back to fight.
Promising war, Steve Bannon's bracing for battle. The now ousted chief strategist telling Bloomberg he's leaving the White House to fight for President Trump.
What is she in a data center recording this? Do you hear that fan noise? So it just really interesting imagery difference. So Fox used pictures of Bannon walking around like an event, patting people on the shoulder. They used the famous shot of him in the Oval Office. NBC has taken photos of Bannon looking down, so he's got the double chin effect, and in this case, they've blown out the contrast and made it black and white to make him look really sickly. None of this accidentally happens in the video editor. This doesn't just accidentally occur.
Right.
In fact, look at this. So you can see here's the original, which is still an unflattering picture. Like, there are pictures of there's actually a few flattering pictures of him at events where he's looking up into the side, and like anybody, his face thins out a little bit and he looks quite a bit healthier. And in general, there's pictures of him where he's more well kept, and there's pictures where he's less well kept. And depending on the news outlets, say Fox or NBC, you see major differences in the images that they choose to portray of Bannon and how they handle that imagery. This Fox News one, or this NBC one, is really strong. Like, they flip through filters really quickly, and they zoom in on Bannon, and they change it to make it look really harsh, to almost make him look like a villain.
Yeah, no, nice setup. Yeah, you're right.
Promising war, Steve Bannon's bracing for battle. The now ousted chief strategist telling Bloomberg he's leaving the White House to fight for President Trump against his opponents on Capitol Hill, in the media, and in corporate America. Bannon now becoming one of the last West Wing originals to leave the picture, 1 year and 1 day after joining Team Trump. The self-styled protector of the president's nationalist pledges mutually agreeing with Chief of Staff John Kelly that he should leave, according to the White House. The news applauded today, literally, when it was announced at the stock exchange.
I'm telling you that Bannon is said to have submitted his resignation.
Cheered by civil rights.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Groups, Democrats, even some Republicans.
The president did absolutely the right thing in firing Steve Bannon.
Of course, Bannon says I wasn't fired. No, I was always going to go around a year. We always talked about it. I wasn't fired. No, not me.
No, and that's why you do it on a Friday, because there's less likely for any kind of retaliation.
Yeah.
It's always simpler that way.
So Breitbart coworker of Bannon was called on to give a little insight, and I thought he actually had some good stuff to share.
Ben Shapiro joining me now as well. Ben Shapiro, of course, former editor-at-large at Breitbart. Ben, you know Steve Bannon well. Take us inside his head.
Okay, so here's what Steve is probably thinking. Steve has been marginalized by the Trump administration for months now. There are a number of figures who are being given more power than he was. Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, H.R. McMaster, John Kelly, the list goes on, Gary Cohn. And so he'd obviously been marginalized. Whether he chose to quit 2 weeks ago, as the New York Times is reporting, or whether he was fired by the chief of staff, it was pretty obvious to Bannon, clearly, that he was on his way out. And so you have to see his activity over the last week as a real reflection of that knowledge. So in the last week, what he's done is he's pushed Trump to not disassociate from the alt-right. He's pushed him to not disassociate from what he considers Bannon's base. And Trump acquiesced because that's who Trump is. And Bannon is seeking to now capitalize on that. He gave that interview to the American Prospect where he ripped Trump's foreign policy up and down, proclaimed that he wanted a trade war with China, proclaimed that Trump's foreign policy was essentially too interventionist. And now he's going back to Breitbart. All of that is setting up the battle lines. The battle lines are going to be that Bannon was ousted because the globalists took control of the Trump administration, that Trump has betrayed his base.
Look what Trump has done in Syria.
Right.
Look how Trump is handling China from before he went in till
China.
The only person that took more hits than China would be Hillary Clinton for Trump. I mean, he hit China constantly during the election, and he's completely changed his tune on
180.
Situation. He dropped the largest non-nuke bomb ever.
That's right.
In Afghanistan.
Yeah.
In Syria, the situation's improved, but also gotten worse. He's dialed down the Pentagon program, but still seems to be going after getting Assad out of there. And we're going to get to the other Afghanistan news today, which is interesting in light of Bannon leaving. So I would say, yeah, Trump has been very interventionist, which is not going to play well to his base.
No, it won't.
And that Bannon is the actual real leader of the populist nationalist alt-right movement. That the alt-right is a small wing of that, but not the whole movement. But that Bannon is the true leader of that movement. Bannon is a super ambitious, deeply vengeful guy, and he knows that he's just held the most powerful position he will ever hold, unless his new position is going to be helping to tear down Trump and build himself up in the process.
It sounds as if you're saying that Steve Bannon's ego is just as big as this president's.
Well, I mean, I said that at the time when he was hired. I said that essentially Bannon is
Yeah, and I think he says he's going to war for Trump, but
I don't think so.
They've actually been so since then they've been very critical of Trump. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to just kind of do an update on Charlottesville. So before we get to the Afghanistan stuff. What a topic, Chase. What a topic. What a thing to cover in a show like this. And it all started so typical. It's a press conference, which has become a familiar scene. I'm talking about Trump's response to Charlottesville.
Right, yeah, not the actual event.
No. The response has become like the scene. It's like, you think about it, like these presidential press conferences we have now in front of these huge gold elevator doors.
So,
which is a real scene.
So they kind of rewinded a little bit, So Trump had his first pre-scripted response,
which we did cover in the Patron episode.
Okay. Before that pre-scripted response, he had his first, gut reaction response, which was 2 days after. Then he had a scripted response to kind of backpedal some of the things that he said, especially with the blame on both sides thing. And then he had this presser, which was not even supposed to be about Charlottesville.
So this is the
third. This was the third.
Okay.
This was on a Tuesday.
Okay.
And this was supposed to be about the new transportation package.
So, I don't want to start there. That's how this thing starts, which is why this is so surreal. This is how it starts.
Regulated permitting process is a massive, self-inflicted wound on our country. It's disgraceful. Denying our people much-needed investments in their community, and I just want to show you this because it was just shown me, and I think I'm going to show it to the media.
They're using props with Trump now.
Both real and fake media.
I think this is good. Oh, got a little fake.
This is what it takes to get something approved today.
That is so.
Elaine, you see that?
So he's showing this long.
This is what it takes. Permitting process flow chart. It's a flow chart.
Elaine Chao, that's the transportation cabinet
shows
director.
About 10.
Yeah, and they talk about how long the process can take.
Yeah,
and
so it was supposed to just be about that.
Yeah,
and they pre-scripted. Basically, he was supposed to go down there, say a few words, and then leave.
Yeah. So we have well, I have parts of the. I mean, I have the whole damn thing, but I'll just play a couple parts of it, and then we can talk about it.
Why did you wait so long? I didn't wait long. I didn't wait long. I didn't wait long. I wanted to make sure, unlike most politicians, that what I said was correct, not make a quick statement.
Okay, you're a Trump fan. Okay, you're a Trump guy, right? You are 100% loving Trump, and you love him as your president.
Who's this? Who's this person?
This is what I'm speaking.
Are you
to.
making a straw man right now?
I'm just.
We'll call him Mr. Straw.
Mr. Straw. All right. Now you also know that Trump is quick on the Twitters, and he is so fast before he gets any information. As a matter of fact, he tweets out misinformation all the time before he gets all the information. So for him saying this,
yeah. I got to be honest though, it smacks of fake controversy a little bit. Like, so when Bush was super late on Katrina, that seemed kind of justified, but the criticism wasn't what he said, it was how long it took him to say it.
Well, but at the same time, though,
why does it matter?
Because he's spoken out on other things instantly before, and I think.
But there's lots of things he doesn't speak out about too. I mean, that's
true. Yeah, absolutely, and then people call him out on that too. But when he says, "Oh yeah, I'm waiting for all the information. I'm waiting for 40 hours."
Well, that's bullshit. Yeah,
it's total bullshit.
I agree. That doesn't seem very likely. Here's what I always try to keep in mind, though, and I'm not using this as justification, but here's what I always try to keep in mind. We know that he gets a lot of his news from the TV, but the president also gets a lot of information, and it's likely. So let's just for a moment go down a Bacon Alley here, and let's say maybe 10% of the protesters there were paid or brought in by a special interest that's maybe paid by George Soros or something on the other end of it. And let's say that this has been happening now at pretty much all of the major protests for maybe a couple of years. And so let's just say that there's maybe an ongoing investigation by the FBI into what's happening here and who's behind it and how it's all organized. And let's also just say that they're providing the president with briefings on the status of that investigation because it relates to some of the shit that happened during his campaign. So he's probably specifically requested it because he's very hung up on that. I mean, it is so likely to me that he has information, even though I know this is Donald Trump and we like to assume he only gets his news from Fox. But to me, it seems so likely that when he says, I know things you don't know, he legitimately does know things we don't know because he's privy to information that the FBI isn't actually leaking to the media. And I'm not giving any justifications here, but what my point is that it's hard to fully judge why he was late. There could be legal constraints around what he's allowed to comment on his Twitter feed that we don't know about. There could be information that was involved in an investigation that took people a while to get him the information before he said anything, because he may know something about why those people were there and why they were so violent that we don't know, that isn't being reported. And so, or it could also be a politically calculated move to try not to anger a larger percentage of his base than we would like to think it is.
That's the first thing I thought of, especially when he made his first comments before this presser. I was thinking to myself, he's sounding like a guy who doesn't want to piss off the people who voted for him, even though that's what he needs to do. Because, in my opinion, yes, Antifa, Antiqua, whatever they are.
Oh, man.
Okay, I understand that there are, and we've seen them in downtown Seattle. We've seen the extreme left and how violent and how they can be.
Yeah, it's really kind of unproductive, to tell the truth.
Yes. In Charlottesville, in this situation, that side were not doing racist things. They were not chanting about Jews. They were not, literally being racist and white supremacist. They were not doing those things in Charlottesville. And for him to make that comparison, he completely lost me.
It's tough for me to think it's just because he doesn't want to piss off a certain percentage of the base. Because so looking at this Business Insider article from November, you look at the turnout. He had a better turnout than you'd really think amongst female voters. I mean, that's pretty remarkable for him. It's not incredible. I mean, it's not like standout, but it's still pretty strong. Like, I think his votes came from a wider base than we have been led to discuss. Does that, I'm following? Like, I don't think it's been a topic of conversation because the people that are leading the conversation are still very uncomfortable about the populist movement. I maintain my theory is that if Bernie had been able to run properly and he competed properly with Hillary, and say he had secured the primary, I believe he would have won the presidency. Not because of he wanted to give away things to people, or because he wanted to make college free, but simply because people wanted a chaos candidate, and they wanted a populist candidate that was saying the things that they all knew has been true for the last 30 years. And it was Bernie and Donald were the ones doing that. And when it wasn't Bernie, it became Donald.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people switched over that wouldn't have normally switched over. And you can look at that in the way a lot of states that were normally Democratic cinchers became Trump states.
Yeah. I agree.
Anyways, so I don't know. I don't know if it's because he didn't want to piss off a certain base, because I think his base were people that wanted a populist candidate, which is a very large base, which is probably why if Elizabeth Warren were to run.
So then, all right, so if that's true, and let's say he didn't really want to try to piss off his base, why wouldn't he just come out? I mean, it's a no-brainer. White supremacist, racist, not good for America.
Like I said, I don't have an answer, but I give you
Killed
a couple.
Somebody at the
I
rally.
gave you a couple thought experiments as to perhaps why, but yeah. All right, so just a little more.
Here is a fantastic young woman, and it was on NBC.
Oh yeah, he goes on and on about the mom here for a bit.
Her mother wrote me, and
did she write him? Did she tweet him? So this press conference is 15 minutes long.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
And he goes on about the statues, but it actually one of my favorite moments was at the end with Jim Acosta here.
This is at a different
one.
one.
Sorry.
Different, yeah.
Oh, but this is still a
I
good
remember
moment.
this one.
Mr. President, can you explain why you did not condemn those hate groups by name over the weekend?
They've been condemned. They have been condemned.
And why are we not having a press conference today? You said on Friday we'd have a press conference.
We had a press conference. We just had a press conference.
Can we ask you some more questions then, sir?
It doesn't bother me at all, but I like real news, not fake news. You're fake news. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. President, haven't you spread a lot of fake news yourself, sir?
So that's a great moment. Yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot. We have that was earlier.
Yeah.
All right. So there was this moment, which was another standout
Two
moment.
questions. Was this terrorism? And can you tell us how you're feeling about your chief strategist?
Well, I think the driver of the car is a disgrace to himself, his family, and this country. And that is, you can call it terrorism, you can call it murder, you can call it whatever you want. I would just call it as the fastest one to come up with a good verdict.
He got a little bit of shit there for not being willing to call it terrorism. Specifically got it from some of his favorite buddies on like Lindsey Graham. The problem with calling it terrorism, and everybody knows this, that's why you can tell they're playing politics, is it totally changes legal classification of everything.
That's what I'd call it. Because there is a question. Is it murder? Is it terrorism? And then you get into legal semantics. The driver of the car is a murderer. And what he did was a horrible, horrible, inexcusable thing.
That seems pretty clear to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I wasn't sure if you had any. Okay.
Nope. No issue with
Then
that.
I think this is probably the most controversial moment. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Define alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying, as
no,
Senator,
define it for me. Come on, let's go. Define
Senator
it for me.
McCain
Come on, let's
defined
go.
them as the same group.
Okay, what about the alt-left that came charging at him? Excuse me. What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt?
So this has been described as drawing a moral equivalency between the Nazis and the quote-unquote counter-protesters. A couple of pieces about this. Let's start with the less important one. This word counter-protester to me is bothersome. It's loaded. It's loaded with defeatism, like with subduity. It's like it's designed to make you think that they're good Samaritans. They're counter-protesters. They're counter-violence. So I find it interesting that apparently everybody got a memo. I didn't even know I had a memo inbox, but apparently everybody got a memo. We're just calling them counter-protesters. So I hadn't really heard alt-left until he started throwing this out there in this particular press conference, and I think that sort of, what is that noise?
It's a dog howling.
Oh, maybe we should. While we're playing the clip, I'll close the window. I think perhaps that threw additional fire on this drawing moral equivalency, or that threw additional gas on this moral equivalency argument. And let's play a little more and let's talk about it.
Let me ask you this. What about the fact they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. So, as far as I'm concerned, that was a horrible, horrible day. Wait a minute. I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news. That was a horrible day.
And then he had nothing to say. He berated them, called them fake news, and had nothing actually to contribute. So, are the can we come up with a different name, because I'm gonna get fired up over that word. Are the progressive protesters? All right, I'll call them. Are the counter protesters to blame for any of this?
For what happened? For the murder that occurred and for the
No, for just violence, not the murder
at Charlottesville.
Yeah,
no. I don't believe so. No. Do they have blame in other situations and protests? Yeah, absolutely. Consider that on a case by case situation. Definitely happens in Seattle every May Day. It feels like. There's definitely some extreme groups on the left side that will cause mayhem and havoc and and those kind of things. But in this scenario with Charlottesville, I don't believe so.
So yeah, definitely not the driving the car into the crowd, and that I think that was more premeditated than people realize. There's some screenshots of some Discord chats where people were planning to be there during the protest, because they're planning the protest of taking down the statue, and in there they're joking about running over crowds and stuff. I have some links to that in the show notes if you want to see it. That
press conference in the words, and it it just really bothered me as an American. It bothered me a lot because this is an and I know that Donald Trump has played upon the fact of
the press conference bothered you a lot.
Well, just the whole thing, like, you know, he had a speech, I think it was the day before, where he was very strong. Now, it was a pre-scripted speech, but it was very strong in condemning the groups involved, that, you know, he doesn't support them in any way. He didn't try to make a correlation of bringing you know, the left and saying, you know, and blaming other groups. He was very focused on that. And then the very next day, or maybe 2 days later, I forget the timing on this, he comes out and he tries to make that equivalency again. And I'm just like, what is going on here? I mean, we need to condemn this behavior. I mean, I agree that there are extremes on both sides, but the extreme on the side of racism and white nationalism is wrong. I don't care if it's a left extreme side or a right extreme side.
So would it be better if he just didn't say anything?
No, I don't think that'd be better at all.
Why does he need to say anything?
Well, he's our leader. He is, you know, he's the country's captain, if you will. You know,
is that really why? That doesn't really sound like a reason, though. That sounds sort of
right now. What you have going on in America, that, you know, sometimes with everything that's going on, it isn't either reported on too much, or isn't talked about too much, or is it just kind of,
I'll tell you,
as a side note, is, you know, there's a huge divide right now. There's a huge group of people on both sides that are angry about things.
So I think it's not huge. See, I think this is it. So this gets to the core of it. So
right.
I will say this before I go any further so I don't forget. I think he should denounce it. I think he should denounce it immediately. And he did say that Nazis are horrible. The reason why I think he should do it is not because he is our moral leader and our compass is set by our God and our president, because if you're setting yourself up, if you're setting your compass that way, then that's really just some sort of holographic construct that you've made in your brain that you're following. Think about it. The idea that your moral compass must be set by your president, every single one of those cocksuckers is an evil bastard who killed his way into that presidency and has probably abused women and treated people horrible. So nobody should be setting their moral compass to any of the United States presidents in my lifetime. That's obvious to me. But I will say this. He shouldn't give the guys like David Duke, who may be a puppet, but he shouldn't give groups that are maniacal enough to drive their car into a crowd any kind of moral authority by thinking they have any amount of support in the president's office. And that's why he should denounce it immediately. Not because I need my moral compass set by daddy.
You said it much better than I was trying to say it in my head.
But
Thank you.
I think that's the reason, is simply because he just needs to take a little bit of air out of their tires. And when he can denounce that kind of thing, then they can't get away with thanking him on Twitter, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is one villain in this entire thing I'd like to talk about for a moment.
Jews will not replace us!
This creepy footage here of these all sort of overweight young white guys that are walking around with these tiki torches that they probably wouldn't buy. What do you think, they went to Costco and got a great deal on tiki torches?
No, it's Walmart, man. Come on.
I mean, they look like some pretty cheap shit, and it's just really embarrassing. This video footage is Vice documentary footage that every single network in the overtime, I think I'm going to play CNN playing it, or maybe CBS. They all play this footage. It's all this Vice documentary, which is, Vice is really all over this. And this is these guys walking around saying some super incendiary things. I believe it was the night before Charlottesville attack.
They were there to protest, excuse me, you take a look the night before, they were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee.
This was that night.
See, I don't think this is the majority. I don't think it is a huge divide. I think this is a small percentage of super screwed up young people who have been sitting around online sharing Pepe memes with themselves for over 2 years now, and they are angry and pissed off, and a lot of shit keeps going the wrong way for them, and they have villainized social justice warriors, they have villainized progressives, and they are fucking pissed. And they're pissed that they don't have a job, or their job sucks, or they're pissed that society sucks, or they're pissed that the swamp isn't getting drained. They're angry. But they're not the majority. It's not a huge divide. It's a sliver.
You had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists.
I really do not disagree with that statement. I don't think that's a moral equivalency. I think he's saying there's a fringe element there that are a bunch of bastards, and he condemns them right there in that statement. But he's saying there's also people there that are just pissed. I'm pissed. I'm pissed about how much money I pay on my health care. I'm pissed about what my tax dollars are used to kill kids in Yemen. I'm pissed about all of this. Like, I do this show because I'm pissed. I'm pissed. And I'm not pissed because I'm a racist. I'm pissed because a bunch of fat cats have been sitting in Washington running this place into the ground for quite a while now. And this guy was one of the candidates that were supposed to make this shit better. And so people that associate them as Trump supporters, by that definition, you could take all those words I just said, they could clip it and say, I'm a Trump supporter. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm just pissed. I'm pissed.
A lot of us are.
And so there is a group of people there that are not Nazis, that are not racist, that are not the KKK. And that's all he's saying.
And he could say that, but I don't think it's, like you said, you know, there's a time and place for it. And right now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Make that argument later.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Don't.
Just end it right there with Nazis.
Yeah, don't.
With the first part.
Don't add on to it, especially when you have someone who lost their life.
Well, you'd think his own political hide would just, like, that mechanism would kick in. He'd be like, well, I probably should just say this part because right now that's the politically smarter thing.
Right. I mean, a good play could have been, yeah, he talks about how bad the people were, calls out the groups by name, moves on, and then maybe a week later, I'm convening a this is like what Obama would do. I'm convening a special panel, right? I'm convening
They would do nothing, though.
Right, but
money.
But he would convene a special panel, get experts. Yeah. What can we do?
Or leak something to Fox and get them going, squawking
something
about
like that. But doing this does not. I don't know how this helps on either side.
I guess the only thing I can figure is he's so desperate to shake up the official narrative. But I just don't know, man.
The neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists.
Could it be that he's so green, like Veritunda in the chat room saying that he's green?
No, because
it's his first political
office.
office.
Fine. He may be green. I'll give him that. But he has, and you've said this before many times, Chris, he has the tools of the United States government at his disposal to get the deepest, most correct information. He's got advisors up the yin-yang.
Well, plus he's very image conscious. So in some sense, just self-preservation of your own image, you'd think you'd just, say. I mean, he's very image conscious. You think that would just be guiding this,
right?
To some degree.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Cantwell. So Cantwell is one of the guys in the Vice video that says that Trump isn't racist enough, and he's doing an interview with her, and he says we don't start the violence, but we're more violent. We're gonna finish it. I go to the gym and I get strong. I'm bringing my gun. Have you seen this guy? This Cantwell guy?
I have not. Yeah.
He has gone to YouTube to bawl his eyes out and tell his side of the story. I play it for you because you're not going to hear it anywhere else, but at least not on mainstream media. But I'll leave it to you to make up your mind.
Stephen Tenney of the Keene Police Department. He's one of the cops that came there. He's one of the cops who saved my ass when I had to pull my gun in Keene. And I emailed him and I said, I don't know what to do. I need guidance. I want to be peaceful. I want to be law-abiding, okay? That was the whole entire point of this. And I'm watching CNN talk about this as violent white nationalist protests. We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful, I know we talk a lot of shit on the internet, right? But, literally, Jason Kessler applied for a permit, months ago for this, okay? When they yanked our permit, we went to the ACLU, and we went to court, and we won. We've been coordinating with law enforcement the entire time. Every step of the way, we've tried to do the right thing. And they just won't stop, We have done everything in our power. We have used every peaceful and...
You get the point. So what do you think of his take?
Well,
leave Britney alone, or do you think it's legit? Like, I mean, they did have the ACLU defend them to get a permit.
Right, but wasn't this the same gentleman who, what was it, the day or two prior, was out there yelling and saying these really nasty things?
The Jew stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I know. I'm not justifying anything.
No, I know. But what I'm saying, though, is he goes from that to now he's crying because he's in trouble.
Here's where I'm going with this. I think there's more to this story than we realize. I think that guy is a piece of trash. And I think he should shut his mouth and just stay off the internet.
Double ding. Yeah.
And if he doesn't, somebody's going to probably track him down and beat his ass.
He'll be crying a little bit more.
Yeah. So that aside, let's just put that aside for a moment. I don't subscribe to the bacon out there that these guys were busting, or that these were hired actors. The people that started the fights. So some people in the audience have sent me some links to some Craigslist postings that were hiring protest actors. And
I think we need to start being careful about those.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah. The listing was for Charlotte, North Carolina, not Charlottesville. And so that's a different thing. Yeah. I mean, that does happen, but that was a different thing. And then the other thing that people have sent is video of somebody claiming that the KKK people and the neo-Nazis and the counter-protesters all got off the same buses, 2 buses, same brand, same make and model, parked, head to ass next to each other, and unloaded all the protesters, and they all walked, the people, the violent ones, and they all walked over to the area and started the shit. There's no imagery of any of these buses that I've seen. The video that people have sent me is a guy saying he saw it, but he's not, and he's saying his friend saw it, but he didn't see it.
Oh, so hearsay.
So I'm not subscribing to any of these conspiracy theories, because in the show notes I've got links to Discord chats where these guys, like this Christopher Cantwell, were planning to essentially, it's funny, man. They're planning from everything from how to take a shit while they're there protesting because they're shutting down the bathrooms, to defense stuff. So, and they were posting pictures of driving a bus into a crowd and joking about it. And then later they posted a picture of a John Deere tractor that they called like a social justice warrior digester or something. I can't remember what they called it.
And by the way, the whole Craigslist thing, I think some of that stuff now, we got to be a little bit careful about, because there's no way to really fully vet if any of that stuff is true. Like, for example, anybody could post a Craigslist posting saying they're looking for X and X people to do this certain thing, just so there would be a story about a Craigslist posting. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Possible.
It's
possible.
I mean, it's very easy to do.
So it's Cheese Bacon in the chat room says, "Hey, Chris Lass, what was up with?"
There's a whole Google that guy. Washington Post actually did a whole article about him. And actually, one of my...
Well, let me read it because people don't know.
Yeah.
She says, what's up with the lone black guy at Trump's Arizona speech last night? Okay, so what's going on with this guy?
So
should I play it? I got a clip of it.
Yeah, go ahead, play it while I find it.
The speech from President Trump brought an angry response from demonstrators in Phoenix. Dozens of protesters confronted police after last night's speech. Some of them threw rocks and water bottles. At least 4 people were arrested.
The president came to Phoenix for a campaign-style rally. He threatened a government shutdown over his planned border wall and hinted that he would pardon a former sheriff who is facing jail time. The president also accused the media of misreporting his response to the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia. Chip Reed is in Phoenix, where at one point the president misquoted himself. Chip, good morning.
Oh, they're really on him.
Good morning. I've covered a lot of President Trump's rallies, and I don't think I've ever seen him this angry. At one point, he pointed directly at the media platform, the dozens of cameras and reporters who were there, and called us bad people and sick people. He still had anger left over, though, after that. He went after Democrats and the 2 Republican senators from Arizona.
You mean John McCain, the war hero?
I hit him with everything.
There's the guy in the background. And he's holding up a sign that says,
Blacks
for Trump. And then on his shirt it says, Trump and Republicans are not racist. This is so great.
Yeah.
It's so great.
No, actually, one of my good friends who's African-American, he told me about this guy. And then I fact-checked and I looked it up. And I'm like, yeah, this guy...
just accidentally ended up in the back of
it's
the camera
not accidental.
shot?
He's like...
He just happenstance, just a total, quinky dink?
No, it's not.
You tell me it's not a quinky dink that this black guy's right there behind Trump?
No, it's not, Chris.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm positive.
You sure?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's a bunch of old white people.
Yeah, I know. But no, but yeah.
So it just seems like a total quinky-dink that a black guy that says Trump and Republicans
he was
are not
placed there, Chris. Come on, man. You know this.
Oh.
You know that.
Oh, you think?
Come on.
You think they would do that, Chase?
Come on, Chris. Come on.
Yeah, of course he was. So what did you find out about him?
Well, that he thinks, for example, these are just a plethora of his thoughts. He thinks Hillary Clinton's in the KKK. Yeah, he's been in. He calls himself Michael the Black Man. He's been in a cult, and he's called Oprah the Devil. These are just a few.
So he's 50% right on the Hillary Clinton thing. Seriously, one of her. I'll you know what? I'll play a clip in the overtime.
All right.
We'll get to it in the overtime. One of her mentors was a big proponent of the KKK, and so much so that during his eulogy, President Clinton gave a speech to try to sort of repaint history. I'll play all of it in the overtime.
Right.
So maybe this guy might be smarter than we think. Anyway, so Trump's here in Phoenix, and as you can tell by the CBS setup, he's fired up and ready to go.
I hit him with everything. I got the white supremacist, the neo-Nazi, I got them all in there. Let's see. Yeah, KKK, we have KKK.
More than a week after the violence in Charlottesville, President Trump was still chafing over criticism he was slow to call out white nationalists.
So what did they say? Right? It should have been sooner. He's a racist.
He claimed the media incorrectly reported his word.
He wasn't specific enough. Why wasn't he more specific?
Attempting to prove his point, the president spent nearly 25 minutes reciting several passages from the statements he made after the incident.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred,
Mike the black guy is shouting "Yes, sir" in the background. It's great.
bigotry, and violence. That's me speaking on Saturday.
But the president left out important parts, including one critical section.
Display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
Mr. Trump also directed his ire at his fellow Republicans.
Please, Mr. President, don't mention any names. So I won't.
Without naming them, the president singled out Arizona Senators Jeff Flake and John McCain, who cast the deciding no vote that sunk the health care bill.
We were just one vote away from victory after 7 years of everybody.
All right, that's not true either.
Repeal.
This is going to be the cost of going against Trump here is that he can sit here on the public platform and rewrite that.
He's trying to destroy any part of support that he remotely has in Congress. I feel.
So I'll say this is his power zone where he goes here and he talks directly to the people and he gets the media to play his clips over and over again. He can just sit here and do this indefinitely, right up until 2020.
However,
just forever.
As a person that works in the media and I don't my views are my own. I want to say that right off the top. For him to specifically point to media personnel, camera operators, people that are there because they love the technical aspects, sound operators. Yes, there's reporters there as well. For them to get basically...
Do you think he is talking to them?
Oh, totally.
I mean, think he's talking to the news actors.
He is, but the crowd they straight up turned around and started yelling at media personnel, and straight up was just hammering down on them and stuff. And it's it feels like to me, and obviously I'm a little biased in this, admittedly, but whenever the media says something that is true, while it's true, it puts him in a false light or a bad light or whatever. It's always fake, and it's against the bad media. And this is one of those things where he's just feeding into this anger. He's feeding into this hate. And that's the part that really is scary to me.
He's capitalizing on their bankrupt trust.
Right.
And he's able to reframe each situation using that bankruptcy that in a way they've earned on their own. I'll tell you what, there's another form of bankruptcy. It's political bankruptcy that we seem to be in. So we have these horrible things happen. And when I say the word identity politics, does it trigger you? You get triggered?
Identity politics?
So this is what the Democrats have been getting slammed for doing, is creating identity politics, which is getting everybody riled up over these things. as an issue that they feel like they could win on. And I find it to be reprehensible because it's so ham-fisted the way they try it, because they're so detached from the people. So take Nancy Pelosi, your good friend.
Oh, my buddy. Yeah.
She is now using this political momentum around all of this to shut down legitimate free speech. It's really getting abused on all sides. She shut down a pro-Trump rally by telling local authorities that it was a white supremacist rally. And you have to hear this clip to hear how ridiculous that is.
Some members of Congress are seizing on the events of last weekend to demand a rollback of freedoms in this country. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, not surprisingly, is at the forefront of that. She's calling on the National Park Service to block a scheduled Patriot Prayer rally in San Francisco. She calls it a white supremacist event that will promote violence. Joey Gibson would know because he's the rally's organizer, and he joins us tonight. So let's be totally honest with one another, Joey. I'm sure you're going to be denounced as a white supremacist. Everybody seems to be now. Are you a white supremacist, and is this rally a white supremacist rally?
Absolutely not. Actually, I'm not white. We have about 8 speakers, and only 1 speaker is white.
I love that.
You know, we have a couple black speakers, Hispanic. We have a transsexual speaker. We have a woman speaker. It's very diverse. You know, it's really just about what's on the inside. You know, what you believe. You know, your heart.
So I play this clip to point out that we are now entering a zone that is very twisted and dark, where we're going to start shutting down speech that obviously shouldn't be shut down.
By the way, the permit has been approved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If I play the rest of the clip, he would say that.
Yeah.
My point is, I think this is a very, very shitty, sort of dark way, twisted way for politicians to shut things down, is to claim, well, it's white supremacist. And what information did she have? Where did she get that information? How did she come up with that? It's dirty. And it's not just her.
Well, it's
not just her.
Well, and you know, the thing is, though, the First Amendment will eventually slap her in the head. And you just can't.
I don't know, man. I think they've been doing this kind of crap for years.
Right.
I think this is just an opportunity for us to analyze it. I think these kind of tactics have been used to shut down speech for a while, but it's just sort of the characters change and the situations change a bit.
Right.
You know what never changes either is the situation in Afghanistan. It just keeps getting worse and worse.
We are about 3 hours away from President Trump's first major policy address. In it, we will learn his strategy for dealing with America's longest war. Expectations are he will allow his commanders to increase the U.S. military presence in Afghanistan, something he has strongly opposed in the past. The address also gives President Trump a chance to reset after one of the most difficult weeks of his presidency.
Yeah, it also gives him ownership of the Afghanistan war now. This is now becoming his war. 16 years, over 3,500 troops lost, just not even counting contractors. And Trump announced this in a really sort of logical loop kind of way that we've heard many times before.
President Trump says he's lifted restrictions on U.S. forces fighting terrorist groups in Afghanistan. In a long-awaited speech, he said there's no deadline for a withdrawal and any change in troop numbers will be kept secret.
We will also expand authority for American armed forces to target the terrorist and criminal networks. We will not talk about numbers of troops or our plans for further military activities.
So let's stop right here. What do you think of that?
It's a similar thing to what Obama said about Afghanistan a few years ago when he made the same similar speech. There's not there. What's the difference?
But they say they're not going to talk about troop numbers
because they're going to raise the troop number.
But then they announce they're going to raise them by 4,000. But so then they tell us the number.
Right.
After the speech where he says they're not going to tell us the number. Now here's the huge shift. This is, I think, the biggest shift ever, really. It is now the direct control of the military when they ramp up and when they withdraw troops. It's no longer going to be approved by the presidency.
Right.
This is something they're changing now.
Okay, let's cross now to Samira Khan live from Washington. Get some more.
I'll stop here. So they've authorized them to increase troops as they need, and Trump swears we're not nation building. We're setting goals.
Or when that will ever happen. America will continue its support for the Afghan government and the Afghan military as they confront the Taliban in the field. Ultimately, it is up to the people of Afghanistan to take ownership of their future, to govern their society, and to achieve an everlasting peace.
So that's ultimately what one of the goals is. So what he says is we're not doing this time frames anymore. We're doing this goal-based.
We are a partner and a friend, but we will not dictate to the Afghan people how to live or how to govern their own complex society. We are not nation building again. We are killing terrorists. The next pillar.
So we are not nation building again. We are killing terrorists, but here's the problem. So he says we're going to have conditions for withdrawal. We're not going to stay there forever, but instead of having time-based, we're not going to have time anymore. We're going to have conditions. And we're not going to talk about how many troops. So the Pentagon will monitor the conditions, and they will determine when the right time is to amp up the troops and withdraw them. But we're not going to nation build. Well, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Right, you can't have one without the other.
Right, because the goals obviously are going to be stability before you withdraw, and the only way to get stability is to stabilize a political infrastructure and a government. You do that by nation building. So 16 years in, it's
I think he just tried to hammer in on a point that we've talked about on the show, the overall nation building thing. You know, it was the Bush clip, the classic Bush clip, you know, talking about was Rumsfeld and going in through the different countries. We're going to hit this, we're going to hit this, we're going to hit this.
Yeah.
Well, he must have picked up on a meme talking about nation building, so he's going to say, oh, we're not doing that.
No, what it is, that is because he's tweeted for years. You go back, I've seen tweets back to 2011 where he's bitching about nation building in Afghanistan. That's what that is.
Yeah.
So what would be considered a success in Afghanistan? This clip explores that question.
Prepare! Do you believe that we're not winning in Afghanistan?
Sir, I understand the urgency.
I like
understand it's my
to win.
responsibility. We're not winning in Afghanistan right now, and we will correct this as soon as possible.
It's our longest war. We've been there for many years. We've been there for now close to 17 years. And I want to find out why we've been there for 17 years, how it's going, and what we should do in terms of additional ideas.
The President has made a decision, as he said. He wants to be the one to announce it to the American people, so I'll stand silent until that point.
Well, the president will not be silent tonight, issuing this primetime address on Afghanistan. Our team at the Pentagon coming up with some confirmation from U.S. officials saying the president has signed off on sending an additional 4,000 troops to Afghanistan. A big part of tonight's speech said to include asking the region to do more, India, Pakistan to do more to bring the Taliban to the negotiating table, and also holding Pakistan accountable for attacks in its country and continuing to support the Taliban. As you take a look at this chart of U.S. troops in Afghanistan from 2009, 51,000, the peak at 100,000 U.S. troops on the ground there in 2011, and the current level at 8,400. And according to sources, again, that goes up to almost 13,000 when all is said and done. Let's bring in our panel.
The other thing that's interesting is I went back, I linked it in the show notes. I watched Obama's 2009 announcement about ramping up 30,000 troops in Afghanistan, and he says almost all the same stuff about the government, about how Pakistan needs to step up the fight against terrorism, about setting goals and conditions instead of time frames. Like, he says all the same stuff in that speech, and it's linked in the show notes. It's really creepy to watch that. So yeah, what does success mean? Well, you know, Trump said something that was interesting as well. He said that they announced a economic deal with Afghanistan. Did you hear about this?
No.
Yeah, so they announced, and I don't know if I actually have a clip of it without having to play the whole damn thing, but they announced a deal where there's going to be a trade of some of the really, really juicy resources. Some people estimate up to $1 trillion worth of resources.
Jeez.
The sale of those resources will be, the Afghanistan government will pay a portion back up to the U.S. government. So we're going to get a cut. We're going to get our piece. And we're going to use that to help pay for some of this.
What do I always say?
What do you always say, Chase?
What do I always say?
What do you always say?
Show me the money! Jesus!
Yeah, there's $1 trillion trove of rare minerals in Afghanistan. Plus, you got the poppies.
Of course, the opium, yeah.
Which is doing better than ever, selling like crazy. That farm industry is doing better than it ever has. It's awesome.
Man.
Good for them. Really good for them. Huge.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, man.
Very huge.
So I don't. So Bannon thinks that the globalists got to Trump. I think the business people got to Trump and said there's $1 trillion worth.
Yeah, there's a lot of money here.
And if the U.S. pulls out, listen, Mr. President, we don't like it any more than anybody else does. But here's the situation: if the U.S. pulls out, Iran or China or Russia or India, China and India would love to have that for their manufacturing industries. They're just going to swoop in there and they're going to try to control the territory. Oof. And so it might as well be us. Yeah. We can get it. We can secure the energy resources. We still have that pipeline we've been wanting to build forever. So it might as well be us. And he sits down and goes, $1 trillion with yeah, Mr. President, we think the United States government could make $60 billion a year.
So I mean, there's been some good chat in the Discord about this, but I wonder if they're going to do kind of like Axiom Max is saying, kind of like a North Korea thing, where we'll help Afghanistan out, we'll be there, we'll set up some bases, kind of like we have in South Korea, so we can keep an eye on Pakistan because Pakistan has
nukes.
Yep.
Also, Iran is troublesome, and of course, when you've got allies like Saudi Arabia, it's not bad to have your own facilities over there. And of course, you never know how things are going to go with Israel. And why not just keep the close eye on Syria too? Yeah. Like, oh, and by the way, Iraq.
And the electricity's cheap. I mean, yeah.
Oh, Chase,
man, Chris.
You know what? Who knows?
I know.
And you know what else? It's time for the patrons.
Reclaiming my time.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks. Yes. I'm reclaiming my time. That's right. It's time for the sack, and it's been a while, so I had to wake up Club 33 and then, hey, Club 33, send me your messages to my sack over at patreon.com/unfilter. This week, Mr. Warm Waffles writes in, and we didn't talk about it on the show this week. Maybe you got something in the overtime, but he said, hey, I've been wondering about net neutrality. Oh. Some and I have some. Let me try that again. It's been a while. I've been wondering about net neutrality for some time, and I've been having some bacon for you guys. Here you go. Here's some bacon. And I'm not in favor of abolishing net neutrality, but this has been bugging me. I have a hypothesis that if net neutrality goes away, it will actually be worse for telecoms because then state governments can enact laws around what goes on. Now, telecom companies have to lobby with 50 entities instead of just one. And if, say, a few states come in and enact their own version of net neutrality, for better or worse, I would think the telecoms would be lazy and pick the lowest common denominator. If the FCC wants Congress to regulate it, then telecoms still have to spend way more lobbying with all the representatives. Telecom lawyers wouldn't be the ones on the panel making decisions anymore. Instead, it would be elected representatives by the people. Or it could go just south and Congress passes a law saying that it defers everything to the FCC without due process. Food for thought.
Good one. Good one.
Yeah, no, this whole net neutrality thing, it was just, I think it was yesterday that the FCC is being forced, they didn't want to, release all like 45,000 net neutrality complaints. They were trying to spin it off by saying, oh, there wasn't any official complaints. So, yeah, it's a great topic.
It is. One we'll be watching more,
yeah. Hey, if you have your thoughts and you're a Club 33 member, head over to unfilter.com/unfilter. I'm sorry. Patreon.com/unfilter. I caught that. And, by the way, even if you're not a part of Club 33, I do want to say that I know I did get a little flack a couple weeks ago for, kind of being a little hardcore as far as, hey, if you're not supporting the show, blah, blah, blah. I got some great feedback personally, privately, well-written, thought-out feedback about it. I do want to say thanks to all those who did heed my call and jump on board.
Yeah, we had a great turnout.
We had a great turnout.
We're just moments away, too, from everybody's call out if you became a patron since our episode 2 weeks ago.
And the great thing, too, is a lot of people, and I suggested this to you, Chris, hey, we need to, if we're going to put out something, let's put out something exclusive for our patrons.
We did it.
And they loved it.
Yeah, and you can become a patron at any point and get access to that exclusive episode.
Yeah, and
which is also kind of a fun beta test. If we get to our next milestone, some of the stuff we did in that patron exclusive episode will be some of the framework we use for the supplemental. So it was a good test that way. So thank you, everybody, for your support. We're trying to get to our next milestone at patreon.com/unfiltered.
That's right. And I want to see more of you guys in there in the Club 33. I know we have a lot of great Club 33 in there. That's your time to shine. I love to hear from you guys. We read it on the show. Even if you don't want it read on the show, but you want to give feedback, feel free to put in there and just say, please don't read, and I won't do it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Club 33, love to have you.
I'll give a plug, too. You heard Chase just mention it a moment ago. We have a Discord chat set up with an Unfilter room. You go to discord.me/JupiterColony. That's where you'll find all kinds of chat channels, including some voice channels if you want to do that. But we have a text Unfiltered chat, which is up on our video recording right now. We'll be tweaking how that looks on future videos and whatnot. We're just beginning to experiment. I literally set this up just a little bit before the show. So you ready for the high note, Mr. Chase?
Yes, it's time to relax.
Yes, this is an interesting one I copped over on the... I had to recently renew my... I guess I can give a... I don't really want to say how I get some of these clips because if somebody reports me, they'll shut me down. But there's a service that I use to get...
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I would just say that you
there's
have
a service
access.
I use that gets me access to the BBC.
You have access.
And so, you know, I recently renewed it, so I was making sure I got my value. And I found interesting positive coverage on the cannabis topic.
Ooh. Oh,
Cannabis, weed, skunk. Call it what you will. For many people, it's a common sight at music festivals, house parties, and frankly, your local town centre. It's the most commonly used illegal drug in Britain, and last year in England and Wales alone, over 2 million people admitted taking it. Even though being caught could land you in prison.
So if 2 million admit to an illegal thing, how many do you think are doing the illegal thing that don't admit?
5 million.
But all over the world, attitudes to cannabis are changing. These countries have decriminalised the drug, meaning if you're caught with a small amount of weed, you're not going to jail. Some have gone further and legalised it. And if you want to see things changing at pace, look at North America. In the US, 21 states have decriminalised small amounts of cannabis for personal consumption, and 8 have gone further, legalising recreational use. But the place that many are watching is Canada, with the country set to legalise the drug next year. So with all this happening around the world, some in the UK are asking, cannabis, time for a change?
Interesting piece.
Coming up next on BBC Newsbeat.
It's and there's 30 minutes left to this.
Wow, it's a full special.
Yeah, if you are a supporter at the level that gets you access to the sync and you want to check this out, or maybe you could just, I don't know, BBC has it on demand in your area.
Or you could use a VPN and you could possibly use iPlayer.
Maybe.
Possibly.
So check that. It was good. It's Cannabis, Time for a Change, and it's by BBC Newsbeat if you'd like to watch the rest or just get it in our supporter sync. Okay, so... I knew this was going to happen. In fact, I'm almost positive we nearly red-booked this. I know we joked about it, and we're going to get into the Church of Cannabis here for a moment. But it starts with a more somber story. It's not a church about cannabis, but a pastor going out on a ledge, for one of his sheep. Chase.
All right.
When it comes to marijuana.
Oh, wait, I played the wrong one. Well, okay. That was a good setup. That was a good setup, but that's okay. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll try to play it in the overtime. I'll play this one instead. This is good. So this guy did create a church to smoke pot. So this is probably more fun anyways. This is a funnier one. I'll play the other one in overtime. This guy has created a church not to sell pot. No. But just to give you a place to smoke pot, because if you come to Denver to smoke some pot and you buy it, you learn very quickly there's nowhere
to go.
You got to smoke it at a private residence or perhaps a place of worship.
Colorado has some of the most relaxed laws in the country. As long as you're at least 21 years old, a person can have up to an ounce of pot in his possession. But it must be consumed in private. But my next guest believes cannabis should be used in a spiritual setting to help people elevate themselves to a higher level. And he's opened the International Church of Cannabis in Denver. Steve Burke joins me now. So, Steve, is cannabis God to you?
So this guy
can hear his IFB
it's horrible.
return. That's
bad.
bad.
If you don't have headphones on, you might not be able to hear it. But yeah, it's so annoying. And you can tell it's throwing him a little bit too. So this guy is, how would you, smarmy? Is that a good way to describe him?
Smarmy?
He doesn't feel like that's quite it. You can tell he's not taking this very seriously, though.
A lot of grease.
Yeah, he's not taking this very seriously. And so this would have been a really funny segment if this other guy was obviously in it for fun, but this guy's taking the total serious tact, and it's kind of awkward.
So first, let me correct a misconception that you might have stated. None of us worship weed.
Okay.
Much of our congregation, which we call elevationism, elevationists believe that an individual's spiritual journey and search for fulfillment is personal journey for them that can be heightened and deepened with ritual cannabis use. So we don't worship weed. We believe cannabis is a sacrament that can help you elevate your life and elevate your understanding of yourself.
Got it. So it's a marijuana church, so to speak, so people come to the church for church services.
Put that in air quotes, by the way.
What would they do when they came into the church?
So we hold our services on Friday evenings, and elevationists are allowed to bring their own cannabis into the church.
So you can still go to church on Sunday, and you get to go chill out after work on Friday.
You get to start off a good weekend.
And we don't preach any singular dogma at our church. We're an interfaith church. We have people of all different religious backgrounds and faiths. And basically, we've created a spiritual home for people to use cannabis in their own spiritual journey to help them elevate their lives.
This sounds like such a stoner pipe dream. Like, hey, man, I got an idea.
Dude.
What if we... Hey,
Dude.
Check this out.
Dude, all right.
What if we created a church, right?
You sell marijuana at the church?
The church does not sell marijuana. The church does not sell any bongs or pipes or anything like that. We're really just a spiritual home for adults everywhere who use cannabis as a way to elevate their lives for spiritual purposes. Now, I'm sure you're aware, the cannabis plant has existed for thousands of years, and there are ancient Chinese manuscripts that refer to cannabis being used for spiritual purposes.
All right, so that was fun. That was fun.
Man.
But it's not cannabis churches that's going to spread cannabis. What do we always say, Chase?
Show me the money.
Yeah, I guess I don't got to play again, but yeah, this is what's going to spread it like a weed. And I don't have to say it. Chase doesn't have to say it. Listen to this city official say it.
As we mentioned, 23 ABC News at 5, Kern County is still figuring out how to regulate marijuana since the passing of Prop 64. This, as California City is now preparing for its first big business boom.
23 ABC's Chloe Nordquist talked to city officials about...
Side note, before they dig into this, look up Tom Scott on YouTube. Everybody loves him. You know, he does the things you should know. He did this great special about the history of California City. I highly recommend it. It's great. California City is it's a great story. Check it out. But
so there's that new proposition that passed, and it means there's new regulations around how you can sell it and how you can grow it, and there's some big money coming in.
Oh, yeah.
ABC's Chloe Nordquist talked to city officials about how they're planning for the addition of dozens of medical marijuana businesses.
Dirt and trees, that's all you and I see out here right now, but soon this could be all marijuana cultivation and manufacturing.
A lot of this across approximately 4,000 acres of land. That's about 6 times the size of downtown Bakersfield.
JBL Cannabis Farm.
They had to get somebody who sounds like a stoner.
Yeah, organic cannabis farm.
Yeah, we're going to grow pot.
Bakersfield.
JBL Cannabis Farm. It's going to be right here. Everything you see out through here.
David Stafford is building an indoor grow park on his 150-acre lot northwest of the city center.
So this guy owns 150 acres.
Yeah.
He's going to turn it into a pot farm.
California City is a larger city, one of the largest cities by geography in the United States, actually in California for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have a lot of land.
And they have a huge problem. They have a huge problem. And that problem is money.
Yep, because there's no industry to bring in tax dollars and revenue for that town.
Yeah, so this gets a little bit into that.
Yeah. The city has awarded dozens of business licenses to marijuana companies and plans on awarding dozens more, all coming to town in the next year. An idea city manager Tom Wheel wasn't even considering a year ago.
This is going to happen everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the problem. There's more and more industries that are going to get automated, so they're going to generate less revenue for states. There's more and more industries that are going to go away, like malls and shopping centers. This is going to be one of the growth industries of the United States. And you would be negligent not to get in on this money. Listen to the numbers here.
Tom Wheel wasn't even considering a year ago.
Until a grower came in and gave us a perspective of what the potential of tax revenue could possibly be.
In June, the city passed a new marijuana business tax, a tax that could bring in up to $15 million a year.
Okay, not bad. That's not nearly what we make here in Washington. Turns out it's way more than they ever make in total in tax revenue.
In the long term, it's going to be a game changer for our community because we have historically lived off a parcel tax.
The parcel tax previously brought in $7.5 million a year.
So this one industry
Yeah.
is going to bring in more money in tax revenue than they have been able to scrounge together with their typical what you call it?
Property tax, parcel tax.
Parcel tax. That's
for their whole town.
That's that's when we've been saying, like, the thing is these numbers are so fundamental to these places that they just have no choice. And it is an industry that is giving jobs, it's equipment, it brings in a whole bunch of infrastructure like water and power and sewer. So it also industrializes areas that otherwise would have just been vacant. I mean, it's so damn attractive.
Bringing up to $15 million a year.
In the long term, it's going to be a game changer for our community because we have historically lived off a parcel tax.
The parcel tax previously brought in $7.5 million a year.
This is going to boost the city like it's never been boosted.
Lots of land that once sold for $8,000 to $12,000, now $50,000 to $80,000.
Property is going up.
Yeah, that's the thing.
This is the first enterprise that actually come into Cal City that is going to be here. Things will build around it. It'll all come to this town because of the structure and infrastructure we're putting in.
Yep.
So it's not even just the revenue, it's the infrastructure too.
It's a big deal.
It's going to be huge.
Huge.
You know what else is huge?
What's huge?
The love for our community. Join
yes,
us.
big hugs.
Join at discord.me/Jupiter Colony. Get in the Unfiltered room and then hang out with us live next week. We'll be over at jblive.tv. We do this show on a Wednesday. We'll be a tad later next week, live-wise, because Mr. Chase will be a little bit delayed. So I'll probably shift the start of the live show a little bit late.
Okay.
So just prepare for that if you're typically a live viewer, giving you a little heads up. But there still will be a show.
Yes, there will be. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll still be here. Thank you very much to our supporters over at patreon.com/unfilter. Don't forget that overtime's coming up. But if you got to head out of here, Mr. Chase, where can they find you?
They can find me in my Discord, too. GGTVDiscord.com is a place where gaming geeks get together, and I can't find another G word. But anyway, yes, check it out.
And
Geek Out. There you go. And you can check out your blog, right? Or
I
your
call it
video
a blog because it's a video blog.
Video blog,
I think that's what the kids call it these days.
Yeah, those millennials.
YouTube.com/Chris Fisher. If you're on the Twitter or just want to see what's going on and just read the feed, follow the network at Jupiter Signal on the Twitters. Send us your feedback, jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. Get in like an email into the show that you want us to review. And then if you want us to read it on the air, join Club 33 and get in Mr. Chase's sack when he opens a thread next week. Yeah, that's right. It's a good place to be.
It's a nice, warm place.
All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning to 248 this week. We appreciate you being here. Enjoy the overtime if you're sticking around. Otherwise, we'll see you right back here
next week.
So my title was going to be Trump's chilling response because Chuck Todd opens up with I got chills and not good kinds in the intro. So Trump's chilling response. I like Ubermind's alt civil war. That's not bad either. I think that's actually what's more like going on here.
Yeah, that's a great one too.
Yeah, I'm flexe.
Control Alt Delete. No, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Now, what do you think? Should we just go alt civil war? I think that's pretty good.
That's a very good one.
Yeah, I
like that.
I think that's a wiener. Ubermind, you are our wiener. Thank you very much. Well, guys, with that, I think if all goes as planned, there is going to be a live recording of TechSnap tomorrow at some point. And, of course, Coder is scheduled at noon Jupiter Broadcasting time, so convert as appropriate. That's the next live stuff. And then content release-wise, a little bit later in the week, we still have a user air in the can as well. So you'll be getting a new user air with a very, very special guest from a long time ago on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, joining us to talk about a very, very funny story involving Red Bull.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can't, by the way,
I'm
itching to come back to user because I have
you
updates.
Got Lineage on that? Is it Lineage?
No, it's Pure Nexus.
Oh.
Well, it's the ROM Pure Nexus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about ROMing my 6th P2. So yeah, you definitely should come back soon.
Yes.
Right.
Not only that, but talk about. Oh, by the way, actually, let's save it until after PAX because next weekend's PAX, and then I can have a full report.
This weekend or next week?
Labor Day weekend. So not this weekend, next weekend.
That's a good idea. All right, let's go with Alt Civil War. Ubermind is the Wiener. Okay, guys. Well, you know what? We're going to get the hell out of here, I guess. Mr. Chase, thank you very much, sir. You did great.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, we'll be a little bit later next week, so everybody's aware of that if you're here live. I'll probably cut the difference, maybe. If people start showing up, I tend to go live. So you'll probably see me well before Chase gets here. Then we'll start the overtime probably when you're like, I don't know, just north of Seattle or something. And, when I see a glimpse from you, I'll start the overtime.
Well, I'm gonna head home, gonna relax, do some gaming later.
Nice.
I'm still trying to get a combined stream with Rakai and I. We do some PUBG. Because
PUBG makes me think like you guys going to a bar, which is so not what's happening.
No. Even though I am trying to get Rakai, I did try to get Rakai to come with me to PAX, but he's busy.
That'd be awesome.
I know. I tried.
Well, enjoy yourself, and I will see you next week. Goodbye, chat room. Chase, say goodbye.
Chatters.
Goodbye, guys.
Bye.